And now, TSPN News with Tom Slivick. Comprehensive news because in today's world, you need more than just sound bites. TSPN, streaming on the World Wide Web, and now on demand at tspntv.com. Hi everyone, Tom Slivick with Supervisor Richard Forster here today on this Monday.
Hi Tom.
Good to see you again, Richard.
You too.
Tomorrow's a Board of Supervisors meeting.
That's
Every other week nearly you have a board meeting. And
this will be one of those meetings, even though you look at the stack of material here, this will be one of those meetings where we probably spend longer in closed session than we do in open session.
Okay. And we'll probably find out why that is when we get to that part. Why don't we start off? We're talking about Rabbit Creek Causeway, or is that? Do you want to start there?
This was,
Okay.
and I don't have the exact cost on this. I can't remember what the exact costs were, but I'm thinking they were just short of $800,000 for the Rabbit Creek Causeway. This was out in the Comanche area on the Comanche. Causeway, the main drag that goes through the Comanche area. And what happened here is there was a failure in the culvert under the Rabbit Creek Causeway. And this is the Comanche Parkway, and that extends out. And if you go out towards Stockton, then you go over the causeway, the Rabbit Creek Causeway. What happened is there was a failure in that culvert underneath, which means it started sloughing off. If that happens, you can have a major failure of the whole causeway section. So we got into a little match with East Bay Mud, and our attorneys thought we were right. Their attorneys thought they were right. Well, I guess they had better attorneys because the judge told us that we were responsible for fixing the whole thing. Now, I got to give East Bay Mud a lot of credit here. They came back with the county and said, we understand why you think it's part of our responsibility because we run the lake, and that is why we thought it was their responsibility, but the court said you own the roadway. Well, East Bay Mud said, okay, we'll split the difference with you, so we'll cover half of it. So I have to give a lot of appreciation to East Bay Mud for accepting half of the responsibility here and half of the cost. The original estimates to fix this were anywhere from about $1.6 million to about $2.3 or $2.4 million, and that was because we were going to do a drilling through the causeway, trying not to disrupt the roadway. By doing an open cut, we were allowed to go out for bid again, which we did, solicit bids a second time for an open cut.
Okay.
And we had, still, these are big national companies that do this kind of work. Our local contractors, while they're great at what they do, this is a little out of their league because it requires some special equipment, but just a different way of doing the project. You have to really be prepared to. One, they had to dig a trench, siphon the water out. That was in the causeway side, the Rabbit Creek side, which is near the Hunt Club. They had to then do an open cut, which required us to close down the road for 2 months. And I also have to give a lot of appreciation to the people in Comanche who travel that road frequently, especially for business and work purposes, because they didn't complain. They understood what was going on. If it meant saving $800,000 plus, then they agreed with that. Although it meant they had to go about 10 to 15 minutes out of their way every day. But we did an open cut there. Down deep. We have pictures in our packet, which are pretty astounding what they had to do. But in the process, they had a specially designed 40-foot long culvert that they dropped in, and then they attached the 20-foot long pieces of culvert, and I think these are 60 inches around. So then they attached the 20-foot pieces of culvert to that. When the first pipe went in, the 40-foot, they actually had to drop it partially submerged because they put what they call a plug in the end of the pipe on the Rabbit Creek Causeway side. That plug was not watertight, though, and this was East Bay Mud's preference. Our engineering department had a preference to put on a hard glass metal type plug. East Bay Mud did not prefer that because they thought it might be difficult to get off down the road. So we put the plug in, and that partially stop the water from coming through. The problem is when your water level is 10 foot above where the pipe's going to go, then you have that much what they call head pushing up against it. So they still had a lot of water to deal with until they had about 10 or 20 feet of cover on it. And they're continually compacting. They put dirt and rock down, then they submerged it with concrete that they put a good dose of that in there, and they finally got it to the point where it was stabilizing.
Okay.
But they have a better compaction rate than what they had before.
Okay.
So the Causeway project...
Because they're doing that method and because it was wet?
Yes.
Okay.
And they have, the Causeway project is complete now. I think November 11th, somewhere, November 11th or 14th is when the final work was done and the road was opened up again. The paving was complete. So I have to give a lot of credit to our Public Works Department, the way they did this. And essentially the segment of road was closed for construction until 11/15, so November 15th. But a lot of credit to our Public Works Department that did a lot of good work on this, managed to reduce the price basically better than in half of what it would have cost. And we have a great section out there now. What they're looking at as the future is slipping those galvanized steel culverts, slipping them with plastic pipe inside of them.
Okay.
So the way it was explained to me, they have a 60-inch, they would put a 45-inch plastic pipe in, and they would grout around it to tighten it up. So they have methods to do all those things.
So that's a pretty good engineering feat that they pulled off down there.
Yeah, well, engineering
was
feat,
only
but you know
for-
what? When you can save the taxpayers of the county, and the project's going to run in the $800,000 range, our costs are going to be $400,000, East Bay $400,000. So essentially there, we save the taxpayers a huge chunk of money. So I think it shows what you can do when you have a little improvising.
Well, it's good East Bay Mud stepping up and becoming a good partner there, and
That's right.
and doing half of it.
And after the concrete was all in, when we got that big rain a couple months ago, well, East Bay Mud wanted to keep the Causeway or the Rabbit Creek side elevation up, so they left the plug in. They wanted the plug left in. Unfortunately, the water level rose about 20 feet in about 2 days. And it popped that plug out. The plug went all the way through the pipe out into the Comanche side.
Oh.
And when that happened, it caused a little bit of damage on the other side, which and the water quickly subsided. So our crews were able to go in and fix that. And basically all that was water flowing out at about 30 cubic feet per second and creating a hole or a ditch effect on the other side. So they had to go in with heavy rock and just fill up the hole with heavy rock, and that'll take care of it. Similar to what you do around your house if you're having that kind of problem.
Okay. Well.
So, Assembly Bill 1347 is the next item up. This came to us from California State Association of Counties, and it has to deal with contracting. And this would mandate a new overly broad claims resolution process on all public contracts with unfeasible timelines, disproportionate requirements and remedies, and duplicative processes of existing ones that exist. So I don't know what it's a lot of words there. Well, I don't know what the author of this legislation was thinking. We got a lot of first time, and even if they're second time, they still don't have a lot of experience. But usually what happens here is you're getting somebody who does contract work for governments.
Okay.
And they're unhappy at the contracting process, either that they didn't get paid on time or that something else happened. And it might only be one or two cases, but now you have a case where Assembly Member Chu wants to author legislation to basically say everybody's doing it wrong. We need to put new processes in place. And it's just not needed. What CSAC is saying is it's duplicative, it's overly broad, it's one-sided, so it favors the contractor side over governments. It puts in unfeasible timelines. There's a usurious interest rate. So what this does is puts an interest rate in place of 10% on the counties. And, nobody's out there with a 10% interest rate right now. So why are you going to put something like that?
That's a big penalty, it seemed to me.
That's right. it puts in non-binding mediation, which what good is it to have mediation if it's non-binding? False Claims Act's exemption, so there's already laws out there to handle these things, and if there are false claims, there are already processes to handle it, but this puts in another exemption on those false claims. It's just it's a terrible piece of legislation, as are many of the pieces of legislation that run through our state assembly and senate now. I would hope the governor would veto this if it makes it that far, but our hope is that the author will back off, rethink his bill, and maybe redo the whole thing, or just chuck it in the wastebasket where it belongs, because it's a bad piece of legislation. Rarely does CSAC, even RCRC, I mean, they don't want to come out opposed to legislation. CSAC is not even saying oppose unless amended. They're just saying oppose on this one because it's so bad.
All right. And we have about, looks like we have about 45 seconds left. You want to speak or highlight what we're talking about next?
I can handle this next one very quickly, the Golden State Finance Authority.
All right.
This has to do with RCRC, basically, the Rural County Representatives of California. This is their financing authority. RCRC is public and private. So this handles the private side. RCRC, the way they keep their dues down and the way they help member affiliates very well is by having the private side that generates funds by having a housing program. Housing program was created over 20 years ago, and RCRC generates a lot of income. But the name right now is the use. Okay.
We're going to be cut off, so we'll get back to that. A little more complicated than we thought. Stay with us right here on TSPN.
You're watching Amador County's local television network, TSPN.